Hello, it is time to tell you about all 12 books that I read in April. I had a fantastic reading month. I'm really excited to tell you about all of these. So starting off this month, I did a 5-star predictions video, which went so well. 2 out of the 3 books that I read ended up being 5 stars. The first was The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels. I loved this book so much. It is a cozy fantasy romance, and we are following some members of the Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels. It's so funny. It's if The Princess Bride were written by a woman. There are tons of Bronte references in here. It's very tongue-in-cheek. It's very absurd. The way that the Victorian era rules of etiquette kind of butt heads with the scoundrel pirate situation is so funny, and it just made for an incredibly hilarious time. I think if you like the type of humor in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, The Princess Bride, you'll really love this. I loved it so much that I went and bought the physical copy and then immediately lent it to my friend so that she could read it because I needed more people to read this book. I also bought the second book, which is The League of Gentlewomen Witches, which I am currently reading but wasn't able to finish in time to film this wrap-up. So stay tuned for my thoughts on that next month. Then I read Gideon the Ninth, which is this dark necromancy sci-fi, and this book was so freaking good, you guys. I think it's going to be on my top 10 books of the year. I absolutely loved the dynamic between Gideon and Harrow. Harrow is Gideon's nemesis. Gideon is Harrow's swordswoman. Harrow is this incredible necromancer, and their relationship is just so interesting. We encounter a lot of other people from different planets. They're all trying to kind of work through this puzzle of sorts. Everybody has secrets. I really loved how the structure of the story allowed us to get a really deep dive into the magic system and understand what this necromancy was and all the layers to it. This is one of my favorite magic systems that I have ever encountered in a book. I just thought it was super well done. Then I read Light from Uncommon Stars, and in this book we are following a woman who has made a deal with the devil in exchange for her soul, that she doesn't have to have her soul damned. She needs to find the souls of 7 different violin prodigies and sell their souls. So she's this really popular violin teacher. People are calling her the Queen of Hell. Her name is Shizuka. We're following her story. We're also following the story of Katrina, who is a trans runaway. Katrina is that 7th soul. We get to hear Katrina's story and hear how she ends up finding Shizuka, and their dynamic together is just really interesting. And then we also have a third perspective, which is aliens who run a donut shop. Don't make me explain to you how the 3 of these things work perfectly together, but they do. They're so perfect. All these 3 stories, the way that they intertwine together. I just had a fantastic time reading this. I think it's such an important book. I think it has a lot to say about the trans experience as well as the human experience as a whole. I think anytime we're talking about aliens and AI, we end up having these really interesting conversations about what it is to be human and what it is to be good or evil when we have people damning other people to hell. I also really enjoyed the elements of this that talked about music. I'm someone who grew up playing multiple instruments, and I don't really play very much anymore, and I just really loved all the way that musical terms were applied using this amazing imagery to non-musical things, and also we really got to understand the craft of playing violin, teaching violin, and also creating and repairing violins. I just absolutely loved all of this book. So good. Ended up being a really solid 4-star for me. Then I picked up The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy. This is something that I had DNF'd a long time ago, and I don't know what was going on in my brain, because the first chapter of this, when I originally read it, the writing wasn't working for me. And then when I picked this up again, I was shocked because the writing is excellent. I do not know why my brain was not vibing with this when I picked it up a couple of months ago. And I think that just goes to show that sometimes it's not the book, it's me. Even if I have DNF'd something before, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to love it again in the future. I will say the ending of this I did not like. I did not like it at all. I had never encountered, there's a trope at the end of this, and I had never encountered that trope before, and upon doing research, I have discovered that this is something that happens occasionally in the romance genre, and there were hints, and I probably should have figured out that that was going to happen, but I did not know that was going to happen, and I honestly felt a little bit manipulated by the book. I felt like my emotions were being toyed with, and I really did not like it. It's also not a trope that's easy to look up beforehand without spoiling the entire book, so I don't really know what I'm gonna do moving forward, but if you've read this before, you know the thing that happens at the end. I didn't like it, but I really did enjoy Heart and Mercy's love story. This book talks a lot about loneliness, and I always love a story that's following older characters. We've had so much romance told from the perspective of the 16-year-old, the 18-year-old, even the 20-something. You know, I want some romance with some adults who are dealing with adult things, and that's what this was. The magic system of this world was really interesting too. This kind of felt like a fantasy version of kind of a little bit of Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, which is a really amazing nonfiction by this woman who works in the death industry. She was a mortician, cremated people, talked a lot about demystifying death, and that's what Mercy is doing in here. And then Hart is kind of like this sheriff guy, and I did really enjoy the story. I just hated the ending, so I'm not gonna rate it because I feel like the ending is gonna skew my rating. And I did really enjoy 90% of this. Then I read A Closed and Common Orbit, which is book 2 of the Wayfarers series. This is one of 3 Becky Chambers books that I read this month. Becky Chambers is quick becoming one of my favorite authors. The first book in this series is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which I really enjoyed. I was kind of expecting the second book to follow the same characters. I really enjoyed how we are following people that we did meet in book 1, but it's not the main people who we met in book 1. And we are exploring so many conversations about what it means to be human in here, especially as that relates to artificial intelligence. I found this to be so incredible. I love the found family that Becky Chambers always creates. Even the structure of this book is really smart. We're in 2 different timelines. So in the present day, we're following these 2 people and how they're navigating their relationship together and this found family that they've found. And they've kind of just been thrown together and they're trying to navigate what it is to be human, and one of them is an AI. It's just a very complicated situation. We're also following one of these characters when she's really young and how she grew up was really tough. Getting to understand her story is really incredible. This book doesn't do the thing that makes me so mad about sequels, where we have to rehash every single piece of world building that we saw in book 1 and we have to get reintroduced to all the characters. This book doesn't do that because we are following different characters, but also because we are in the perspective of a young child who is learning about the world for the first time because she had an extremely sheltered upbringing. So we're getting to get to know who she is as a person, and this really incredible journey kind of feels like The Martian, if you've read that book by Andy Weir, where someone is trying to just scavenge from what they can in a really tough situation and use their intelligence in order to fix up this spacecraft. But because she is a child, she's learning all of these things about the world, and we're learning through her. So for people who had just read book 1, they remember all that stuff. It's still a purpose to the story of watching her uncover all of those things. But if you've forgotten, if it's been a couple months or a couple years, it's so easy to get right back into the world, and I thought that was really smart and really well done. Then I read The Song of Achilles. This is my friend Trista, one of her favorite books, and I have been wanting to read this for a really long time, and I finally got around to it this month, and I really enjoyed this. I think this was done exactly as it should have been. My favorite retellings are being retold for a reason, and that's definitely present in this book. We're talking about Achilles, but this is not told from Achilles' perspective. This is from Patroclus's perspective. People who study this time and this story always say that Patroclus and Achilles are like roommates. This author basically wanted to say, no, they were in a relationship, they were together, and kind of rewriting this story with that queer perspective, and I loved it. But this is a Greek tragedy. Things go on. Hubris is present in here, and it wouldn't be a Greek story without that present. But that was what made me so angry about Patroclus's and Achilles' actions and the things that they were saying and doing, because they had this hubris, but it wouldn't be a Greek story without that, so I understand why it's in there. I think Madeline Miller really stayed true to what this story was, with that queer lens informing the way that she told the story. I thought it was really well done. It's not 5 stars, it's not one of my favorites, but I really do respect that book. Next up, I read The Empress of Salt and Fortune, and I've never read a book that was told in this way. It's really interesting because it basically feels like you sitting down with someone who's telling you a series of stories. It's very much about storytelling. We have this person who that's their job, is to write down stories and collect this information. And then the person who's telling her all these stories is someone who is very close to the Empress, who has passed away recently. And so we're getting all of these stories about the Empress because this woman rabbit had a really close relationship to her, and we're kind of uncovering all of the different elements of this world through these stories because we're kind of just dropped into the middle of this. This is a really short book. It's only 112 pages, so there's not really a lot of space for extensive world building. So we're just kind of dropped into these stories, and I think they were really deliberately chosen and crafted to give us little pieces of what this world is and how people behave and what's important. I had a really amazing time. I'm gonna read the sequel next month. Okay, and then I also finally reread Heartstopper and read the second book in this series. I've had this for months and months, and I've just been saving it for a rainy day, and I don't know why I kept saving it, because I mean, I knew it was going to be fantastic, and it was fantastic. I need to stop doing that. I need to just read the books that I'm excited about when I'm excited about them, because otherwise they sit on my shelves for so long that I kind of forget that they're there. So I actually did just find the rest of the series used, and I'm going to read them hopefully very, very soon in the next month or two, so that the story is fresh in my brain, because I just want to read volumes 3 and 4. I want to be able to go and watch the show, because I haven't watched it because I wanted to read all of the volumes that are out so far before I watch the show. I think summer's the perfect time to read about people in love. If you haven't heard of Heartstopper yet, let me introduce you to this amazing graphic novel. I think that Alice Oseman is an incredible artist. Just the way that their art works with the story, they really take advantage of the panel placement and the really cool things that you can do with like a handwritten graphic novel. I just really love their art style. This is about Nick and Charlie. They meet at school, they become friends, they fall in love. It's amazing. Then I reread The Monk and the Robot duology, Psalm for the Wild-Built and A Prayer for the Crown Shy. I read these with my mom. I convinced her to read these. We're doing a little book club. We had met up to discuss the first half of the first book, and then she called me out of the blue this morning because she had finished the first book and she was crying over her breakfast having read this, and she was like, "Can we have an impromptu book club? I need to talk about this." So it was really, really sweet. I love this story so much. We're following a monk named Sibling Dex, and they are trying to figure out what their purpose is in life, and we're having lots of conversations about if we even have a purpose and what purpose is and all these sorts of things. Dex is currently a tea monk, which means that they are a person who you can go to for an hour or two when you just need a break, and they will listen to your story, make you a custom cup of tea, and just give you a place to rest for an hour or two. I need that. I wish we had tea monks in our world. I want to live in these pages so badly. We're also following a robot who comes out of the woods. They are these artificial intelligences, and they basically went off to the woods when they became sentient. This is the first contact that robots and humans have had since that happened. That was a long time ago, so nobody remembers the factory age when we had robots. The robot has a question: what do humans need? And it's trying to answer this question. So Dex takes it around to a bunch of people in order to try to answer this question, and that's kind of what's happening in book 1 and 2. They develop this really beautiful friendship, and through these travels we get to explore this world. And one of my favorite things about this world is it imagines a post-capitalist world and what we would use if we didn't have currency, how our society would look if we had half of the world just left to nature. It's so amazing. This is my favorite duology I have ever read. This is going to appear in my top 10 best books of the year, if not in number 1. I don't see how anything could top it. It's incredible. If you read one book from this list, please let it be this. I think you're missing out on half the experience if you only read the first one. I would encourage you to read both at the same time. Last book, wrapping up this month, I read The Stone Sky, which means I have completed the Broken Earth trilogy. The first book is the 5th season, and then the second book is The Obelisk Gate. This is one of the most well-written series I have ever read. N.K. Jemisin is so smart in the way that she writes. I love how this series plays with perspective and time, and the earth, the magic system in here is incredible. I just love everything about how this series works. I'm not gonna say any more than that because this is the third book in a trilogy, and I feel like I would spoil the entire trilogy if I tried to tell you anything that went on in here, but let's just say that I love this series. I'm gonna pick up more N.K. Jemisin as soon as I physically can. That's everything that I read. I don't know why I didn't hold this up when I was talking about Gideon the Ninth. Please forgive me. I'm sure editing me put a lovely picture up there for you instead. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you all for being here. I love you all so much. Your comments make me so freaking happy. Every time anyone says that I am their comfort YouTuber, I just have the biggest smile on my face because that's exactly what I want to be, and that's exactly what I want to do, and I'm just having so much fun sharing my love of books with you guys, and I'm so excited for the content that I have planned coming up. We're getting so close to 1,000 subscribers, which is absolutely incredible. I'm just having an amazing time, and I'm glad that you're here. Okay, if you're not already subscribed and you'd like to be, I hope that you'll join our little community here. I post every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and I will see you next week. Bye!